Captain Mara Lynn pressed her face against the porthole of the transport shuttle, watching as Orion Outpost grew larger against the burnt orange backdrop of Nera 4. The space station resembled a massive metal flower, its petals extending outward in perfect symmetry, each section housing different species from across the Galactic Alliance. After 3 months of intensive diplomatic training and cultural briefings, she was finally here, humanity's first liaison officer to this multicultural hub on the edge of known space. The shuttle docked with a soft thud that reverberated through the hull. Mara gathered her single duffel bag, straightened her crisp blue uniform, and checked her appearance one last time in the reflective surface of the shuttle wall. Her black hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her dark eyes held the steady confidence that had served her well during her years as an Earth Marine. Now, instead of combat zones, she would be navigating the delicate terrain of interspecies diplomacy. As the airlock cycled open, Mara stepped into what appeared to be a medical facility rather than a docking bay. White walls gleamed under harsh lighting, and the air carried the sterile scent of industrial-grade disinfectant. A delegation of 3 beings waited for her, each maintaining a precise distance of exactly 2 meters from where she stood. The largest figure stepped forward, or rather slithered forward on powerful serpentine legs. Commander Silvak's obsidian black scales caught the light like polished stone, and his amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made Mara grateful for her military training in maintaining composure under scrutiny. 2 smaller beings flanked him, a creature that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a crystal formation, and another with blue-gray skin and too many joints in all the wrong places. Captain Lynn. Commander Silvak's voice rumbled through a translation device mounted on his chest. Welcome to Orion Outpost. I am Commander Silvak, and these are Information Officer Tavarian Plex and Dr. Corontrell. He gestured to the mantis-like being and the blue-gray humanoid, respectively. Before we proceed, there are critical safety protocols we must observe. Mara nodded politely. Of course, Commander. I've reviewed the standard diplomatic guidelines. These are not standard guidelines. Dr. Trell interjected his voice, carrying an odd harmonic quality that suggested multiple vocal cords. These are human safety protocols established specifically for your protection and ours. He activated a holographic display that materialized between them, showing a detailed schematic of human anatomy. Your species' unique physiological composition presents certain challenges. The display zoomed in on the circulatory system, highlighting it in alarming red. Your body contains dangerous levels of dihydrogen monoxide, a compound that, according to our xenobiological databases, should theoretically dissolve organic tissue on contact. Mara blinked. I'm sorry, did you say dihydrogen monoxide? Precisely. Tavarian Plex's crystalline structure chimed as he spoke. H2O, water, the most corrosive substance known to biological systems. We are frankly astounded that your species has survived this long with such concentrations of it flowing through your bodies. It took every ounce of Mara's diplomatic training not to burst out laughing. She maintained a neutral expression while her mind raced. Water. They were afraid of water. I see. And what exactly do your databases suggest might happen? Commander Silvak's scales darkened slightly. Complete cellular dissolution. Essentially, you should melt. He paused, studying her carefully. The fact that you are standing here intact suggests either remarkable resilience or that our data is incomplete, until we determine which we must maintain absolute caution. Just 1 drop of water spillage could trigger a catastrophic reaction. Dr. Trell added, consulting a handheld device that beeped ominously. We've prepared a specialized containment suite for your stay. Follow us, but please maintain the minimum safe distance of 2 meters at all times. The procession through Orion Outpost was unlike anything Mara had experienced. Beings of various species lined the corridors, all maintaining the prescribed 2-meter distance, and many wearing what appeared to be protective equipment. She caught glimpses of creatures with chitinous exoskeletons, others that seemed to be made of flowing gas contained within energy fields, and some that defied easy categorization entirely. Tavarian Plex walked alongside her, though walked wasn't quite accurate for the way his crystalline legs clinked against the deck plating, constantly checking the distance with a small measuring device. 2.03 meters, he announced. 2.01 meters. 2.00 meters. Please adjust your pace, Captain. They arrived at what Commander Silvac proudly announced as the most advanced humanoid containment facility in the sector. The room beyond the hermetically sealed door was spacious and comfortable with all the amenities Mara might need for an extended stay. What caught her attention, however, were the warning signs posted at regular intervals around the room. Caution, no water contact. Warning, H2O monitoring in effect. And perhaps most amusing, emergency dissolution protocols active. Your meals will be delivered through the food port, Dr. Trell explained, pointing to a small compartment in the wall. We've carefully analyzed human nutritional requirements and removed all traces of dihydrogen monoxide from your food supply. Mara finally spoke up. Doctor, I appreciate your thoroughness, but I think there might be some misunderstanding about human physiology. Perhaps we could schedule a time to discuss. Absolutely not. Dr. Trell's skin flushed a deeper blue. Direct consultation is far too dangerous. We will conduct all examinations and discussions through the observation window. He gestured to a large pane of transparent aluminum that separated her quarters from what appeared to be an observation deck. Rest assured, Captain, we will solve the mystery of your species' resistance to dissolution. Science will prevail. As the three aliens departed, their footsteps echoing down the corridor in a rhythm that suggested urgent discussion, Mara finally allowed herself to smile. She opened her duffel bag and pulled out a standard-issue water bottle, one of 6 she had brought for the journey. The irony was too perfect. She was surrounded by beings who believed that the substance making up 60% of her body would kill her on contact. She unscrewed the cap and took a long drink, enjoying the cool liquid as she contemplated her situation. Her mission was to establish strong diplomatic ties with the various species represented at Orion Outpost, laying the groundwork for humanity's full integration into the Galactic Alliance. However, she couldn't very well accomplish that goal while trapped in a containment suite, because her potential allies thought she might spontaneously dissolve. The next morning brought her first official meeting conducted through the observation window, with a full complement of recording equipment capturing every moment. Commander Silvac, Dr. Trell, and Information Officer Plex were joined by several other beings, creating what looked more like a scientific observation than a diplomatic conference. Captain Lin, Commander Silvac began. We have spent the night reviewing our xenobiological databases, and we remain puzzled by your continued structural integrity. Dr. Trell has several theories he would like to present. Dr. Trell activated another holographic display, this one showing molecular diagrams. Theory 1. Humans have developed an advanced internal containment system, possibly using bioengineered compartmentalization to prevent the H2O from making direct contact with vital tissues. Mara leaned forward. Doctor, with respect, I think you might be overcomplicating things. What if I told you that water isn't dangerous to humans at all? In fact, it's essential to our survival. The room fell silent. Tavarian Plex's crystalline structure began to emit a low musical hum that Mara's translation device identified as extreme anxiety. Dr. Trell's skin shifted through several shades of blue before settling on a pale, almost white hue. That's impossible, he whispered. Our databases clearly indicate. Your databases might be incorrect, Mara suggested gently. Perhaps they're confusing water with something else, acid maybe, or some other corrosive substance. Commander Silvac's scales darkened further. Captain, are you suggesting that our scientific institutions have made an error of such magnitude that it has shaped our entire approach to human contact protocols? I'm suggesting that maybe we should examine the evidence more carefully, Mara replied. For instance, what would you expect to happen if I were to come into direct contact with water right now? The question sent a ripple of alarm through the assembled beings. Dr. Trell began frantically tapping commands into his handheld device. Immediate dissolution of dermal layers followed by systemic collapse as the H2O infiltrates your circulatory system. Complete structural failure within minutes. Mara nodded thoughtfully, then reached into her pocket and pulled out her water bottle. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Tavarian plexus structure flared so brightly that several beings had to shield their optical organs. Dr. Trell stumbled backward, his device emitting a series of urgent alarms. Even Commander Silvac, despite his obvious attempt to maintain command composure, couldn't hide the way his scales shifted to a pattern Mara's cultural briefings had identified as extreme concern. "Captain," Commander Silvac's voice carried a note of authority mixed with panic. "Please secure that containment vessel immediately. If there's a breach—" "Commander, this is just a water bottle," Mara said calmly. "Standard Earth equipment. Every human carries one. Watch." She deliberately unscrewed the cap, causing another wave of alarm throughout the observation deck. "Security alert!" Tavarian Plex's voice reached frequencies that made the translation devices squeal. "Possible containment breach in human quarters. All personnel to emergency stations." Warning lights began flashing throughout the station, and Mara could hear the distant sound of blast doors sealing as emergency protocols activated. She looked around at the chaos she had inadvertently caused by simply opening a water bottle and decided that perhaps a more gradual approach might be necessary. "Please, everyone calm down," she said, screwing the cap back on. "As you can see, I'm still here, still intact. Maybe we should discuss this more systematically." Over the following days, Mara began what she privately thought of as her water education campaign. Through the observation window, she explained the role of water in human culture, biology, and civilization. She described rivers and oceans, told stories of human swimmers and sailors, and explained how water was used in everything from agriculture to art. The reactions were mixed and often amusing. Dr. Trell approached the topic with scientific fascination, constantly taking notes and requesting clarification on specific points. Tavarian Plex maintained his distance but seemed increasingly intrigued by the concept of humans voluntarily immersing themselves in large bodies of H2O for recreation. Commander Silvac listened with the attention of a military strategist, trying to understand a potential weapon. "You claim that humans consume this substance regularly?" Dr. Trell asked. During one session, his skin displaying a pattern Mara was learning to recognize as intense concentration. "Multiple times daily," Mara confirmed. "It's our primary beverage. We also use it for cleaning, cooking, and countless other purposes. And there are no protective measures, no specialized equipment to prevent dissolution. None whatsoever. In fact, we often go swimming. That's when we immerse our entire bodies in water for pleasure." This revelation caused Dr. Trell to spend several minutes in what appeared to be a metabolic shutdown, his breathing apparatus, working overtime to process the information. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a note of awe. "Your species routinely practices voluntary submersion in a substance we consider the most dangerous compound in the known galaxy. For pleasure." "Well, when you put it like that, I suppose it does sound rather extreme," Mara admitted. As word of these discussions spread throughout Orion Outpost, Mara began to notice changes in the behavior of the station's inhabitants. The initial terror seemed to be giving way to curiosity, though the safety protocols remained firmly in place. Beings would gather outside her observation window, listening to her explanations and engaging in animated discussions among themselves. It was Tavarian Plex who first suggested what he called controlled exposure research. During one of their daily sessions, his crystalline structure displayed the color patterns Mara had learned indicated excitement, mixed with caution. "Captain, your descriptions of human-water interactions suggest a relationship we have fundamentally misunderstood," he said. "Dr. Trell has proposed a scientific demonstration under controlled conditions. Would you be willing to participate? Mara saw her opportunity. Of course. What did you have in mind? Dr. Trell stepped forward, his skin cycling through several shades of blue, before settling on a pale aquamarine. We propose to introduce a single drop of H2O to your dermal tissue, while monitoring your vital signs and structural integrity. If our databases are correct, we should observe immediate dissolution. If your claims are accurate, there should be no adverse reaction. And if there's no adverse reaction, Mara asked. The silence that followed was telling. Commander Silvac finally spoke his voice, carrying the weight of someone making a significant decision. Then, we will need to completely reevaluate our understanding of human physiology and adjust our protocols accordingly. The controlled exposure research was scheduled for the following day and quickly became the most anticipated scientific event in Orion Outpost's recent history. Representatives from all 12 species present at the station requested permission to observe, and Dr. Trell spent the intervening time frantically calibrating monitoring equipment and preparing what he called emergency dissolution countermeasures. As Mara was escorted to the station's main laboratory, still maintaining the prescribed 2-meter distance, she could sense the excitement and tension in the air. The lab itself was a marvel of multi-spice engineering, with equipment designed to accommodate the varying needs of different forms of life. At the center of the room, a specialized examination chamber had been prepared, surrounded by more monitoring devices than Mara had seen outside of a hospital. Captain. Dr. Trell began his voice, carrying the formal tone of someone conducting a historical experiment. Before we proceed, I must inform you that we have prepared every possible safety measure. If dissolution begins, we have containment fields ready to prevent contamination of the surrounding area. Mara nodded solemnly, playing her part in the drama. I understand, Doctor. I'm ready to proceed. She entered the examination chamber, where a single chair waited beneath an array of sensors and cameras. The assembled observers, a fascinating collection of beings representing the diversity of Galactic Alliance membership, watched through protective barriers as Dr. Trell made his final preparations. Beginning baseline readings, he announced. Subject's structural integrity appears nominal. No signs of pre-existing dissolution damage. He paused, checking his instruments. This is fascinating. If our understanding were correct, you should already be showing signs of deterioration simply from the H2O in your system. Maybe that should tell us something, Mara suggested. Dr. Trell had prepared what he reverently referred to as the sample, a single drop of pure H2O contained within a specialized delivery system. He activated the chamber's internal manipulator arms, and Mara watched as the tiny drop was positioned exactly 1 centimeter above her outstretched hand. All monitoring systems active, Tavarian Plex announced from his position at the control console. Emergency protocols standing by. Release the sample, Commander Silvac ordered. The drop fell landing on the back of Mara's hand with the tiniest of sensations. She looked up at the assembled observers, all of whom were frozen in anticipation of her immediate dissolution. Seconds passed. The monitoring equipment hummed quietly. Nothing happened. Readings. Commander Silvac asked, his voice carefully controlled. No structural degradation detected. Tavarian Plex reported his crystal structure flickering rapidly between colors. No cellular breakdown. No signs of dissolution. All vital signs remain within normal parameters for human physiology. Dr. Trell stared at his instruments in amazement. This is unprecedented. According to every theoretical model we have, you should be melting. Mara smiled, and in a move that caused several observers to emit sounds of alarm, rubbed the water into her skin. As you can see, Doctor, I'm perfectly fine. In fact, that felt quite refreshing. The implications of this simple demonstration rippled through Orion Outpost like a shockwave. Within hours, the human safety protocols were under review, and Dr. Trell had begun what he called a comprehensive reevaluation of xenobiological assumptions regarding Terran physiology. But Mara wasn't content to stop there. She had a larger point to make, and she was beginning to formulate a plan that would address not just the water misconception, but the broader issue of species integration and understanding. "Doctor," she said during their next session, "I'd like to propose something more ambitious, a comprehensive demonstration that could settle this question once and for all." Dr. Trell's skin shifted to a pattern of intense curiosity. "What do you have in mind?" "A public demonstration. Not just a single drop, but a full presentation about the role of water in human life. I want to show everyone at Orion Outpost that not only is water harmless to humans, but it's essential to our survival and culture." The proposal sent ripples of excitement and concern throughout the station's leadership. Commander Silvac called an emergency meeting of the Outpost Council, where representatives from all 12 species debated the risks and benefits of such a demonstration. Tavarian Plex, who had become increasingly fascinated by human physiology, argued in favor of the presentation. "The captain's initial demonstration has already challenged our fundamental assumptions," he reported to the council. "A comprehensive study could revolutionize our understanding of biological diversity." Others were more cautious. A representative of the thermic collective beings composed primarily of superheated gas expressed concern about the precedent such a demonstration might set. "If we allow one species to disregard established safety protocols, what prevents others from demanding similar accommodations?" Commander Silvac, ever the military strategist, focused on the practical implications. "If Captain Lin's claims are accurate, we have been operating under false assumptions that have limited our ability to work effectively with human personnel. This directly impacts our military and diplomatic capabilities." After 3 days of debate, the council reached a decision. They would permit Mara's demonstration, but it would take place during the monthly Biological Safety Conference, a gathering of the station's scientific personnel and species representatives. If her presentation was successful, it would provide the foundation for a complete revision of human-related protocols. Mara spent the following week preparing what she privately thought of as the most important presentation of her career. She gathered data on human physiology, compiled cultural examples of water usage, and even composed what amounted to a love letter to H2O and its role in human civilization. The day of the Biological Safety Conference arrived with an atmosphere of anticipation that permeated the entire station. The main conference hall had been configured to accommodate all 12 species present at Orion Outpost, with environmental controls adjusted to provide suitable conditions for each form of life. As Mara entered the hall, she was struck by the diversity of the assembled audience. There were the crystalline Tavarians, the reptilian Silvacons, the gaseous thermic collective representatives contained within their energy fields, and 9 other species representing the breadth of Galactic Alliance membership. All had come to witness what many considered a potentially revolutionary moment in xenobiological science. Dr. Trell introduced her with the gravity befitting a historic occasion. "Colleagues, we gather today to witness what may be the most significant challenge to established xenobiological theory in recent memory. Captain Mara Lin of the human species claims that dihydrogen monoxide, a substance our databases classify as universally corrosive to organic tissue, is not only harmless to her physiology, but essential to her survival." Mara stepped forward to the presentation platform, where she had arranged a variety of props for her demonstration. At the center of the display sat a large, clear container filled with pure water, a sight that caused several audience members to shift nervously in their seats. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," she began, "I stand before you today not as a dangerous anomaly, but as a representative of a species that has thrived in partnership with the substance you know as H2O. We call it water, and it is the foundation of our civilization." She activated the holographic display system, showing images of Earth's oceans, rivers, and lakes. 71% of my home planet's surface is covered with water. We evolved not despite this substance, but because of it. Every human body is approximately 60% water. It flows through our circulatory systems, comprises the majority of our cellular structure, and is essential to every biological process that keeps us alive. The audience remained transfixed as Mara continued her presentation, explaining the water cycle, describing human agriculture and industry, and showing images of humans engaged in water-based activities. She told them about swimmers and sailors, about the cultural significance of rivers and oceans, about the simple pleasure of a cool drink on a hot day. But perhaps, she said, approaching the climax of her presentation, the best way to demonstrate the true nature of the relationship between humans and water is through direct observation. She moved toward the container of water, and the tension in the room became palpable. Dr. Trell's monitoring equipment began registering elevated stress levels from multiple species as they anticipated what might come next. According to your databases, what I'm about to do should result in my immediate dissolution, Mara said, lifting the container. According to human experience, it's simply having a drink. Without further ceremony, she raised the container to her lips and began to drink. Not a sip, not a tentative taste, but a long, refreshing drink that demonstrated her complete comfort with the substance that had terrified the station's inhabitants. The reaction was immediate and varied. Tavarian Plex's crystalline structure flared so brightly that several beings had to adjust their optical filters. A representative of the Methanic Confederacy emitted a series of sounds that the translation system identified as profound amazement. Even Commander Silvac, despite his military composure, couldn't hide the way his scales shifted through patterns of astonishment. Dr. Trell stood frozen at his monitoring station, staring at readings that showed no adverse effects whatsoever. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Every theoretical model we have says you should be fine," Mara suggested, setting down the container. "Which, as you can observe, I am." She moved through the crowd, maintaining respectful distances, while explaining the finer points of human hydration. "We don't just tolerate water, we require it. A human can survive for weeks without food, but only days without water. It's not a strange alien substance to us. It's life itself." The aftermath of Mara's presentation was swift and comprehensive. Within 24 hours, the human safety protocols were officially revised. The mandatory 2-meter distance was reduced to the standard diplomatic spacing used for all species interactions. The containment suite was converted back to regular guest quarters. Most significantly, Dr. Trell began collaborating with Mara on a comprehensive study of human physiology, approaching the subject with the enthusiasm of a scientist who had discovered an entirely new frontier. Commander Silvac summoned Mara to his office the day after the presentation. His quarters reflected his species' aesthetic preferences, with smooth stone surfaces and carefully controlled lighting that emphasized the natural patterns in his scales. "Captain Lin," he began, "your demonstration has had significant implications beyond the immediate scientific community. I've received communications from Alliance Command requesting a full report on your species' capabilities and requirements." Mara nodded. "I hope the report will be favorable, Commander." "More than favorable. Your ability to thrive in an environment that we considered universally hostile suggests that humans may be more adaptable than we initially understood. This has strategic implications for Alliance operations in diverse environments." He activated a holographic display showing star charts marked with various classifications. "There are dozens of worlds that we have avoided because of their high H2O content. If humans can not only survive but thrive in such environments, it opens new possibilities for exploration, colonization, and resource utilization." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Dr. Trell. "Commander, Captain Lin, you need to see this immediately." They hurried to the medical laboratory where Dr. Trell was analyzing data with the assistance of Tavarian Plex and several other researchers. His skin was cycling through rapid color changes that indicated extreme excitement. "Captain, your demonstration has sparked a revolution in xenobiological research," he announced. We've been reviewing our databases and we've discovered that the H2O prohibition isn't based on direct observation or experimentation. It's based on theoretical projections that were never tested. Tavarian Plex's structure chimed with harmonious frequencies. We've been operating under assumptions that may be centuries old. Your species isn't the first to challenge our understanding. We've simply never bothered to investigate. Dr. Trell pulled up a series of files on his display system. We've identified at least 6 other species whose physiology might be compatible with H2O environments, but we've never made contact because our protocols classified them as incompatible with station life. The implications were staggering. Mara realized that her simple demonstration had uncovered a systematic flaw in the Alliance's approach to species integration. How many potential members of the Alliance have been excluded because of untested assumptions? We're still calculating, Dr. Trell admitted. But the preliminary numbers suggest that our xenobiological caution may have cost us decades of potential collaboration. Over the following weeks, Mara found herself at the center of what became known as the compatibility revolution. She was officially appointed as the station's first diplomatic biology advisor, tasked with reviewing and revising species interaction protocols. Her quarters were converted into a workshop space where she collaborated with researchers from multiple species to develop new approaches to xenobiological assessment. The work was challenging but rewarding. Mara discovered that her background as a Marine had prepared her well for the systematic approach required to dismantle decades of accumulated assumptions. Each protocol they reviewed revealed new possibilities for expanded cooperation and interaction. Tavarian Plex became one of her closest collaborators, his analytical nature complementing her practical experience. During one of their sessions, he made an observation that stuck with Mara. Your species' willingness to challenge our assumptions demonstrates something we hadn't considered: the value of direct experience over theoretical projection. Sometimes, Mara replied, the best way to understand something is to just try it and see what happens. The transformation of Orion Outpost was gradual but profound. As the revised protocols took effect, the station's atmosphere became more relaxed and collaborative. Species that had maintained rigid separation began to interact more freely. The dining facilities were reconfigured to accommodate mixed species gatherings. Most symbolically, the medical bay's isolation wards were converted into multicultural meeting rooms. Dr. Trell, who had initially been terrified of Mara's presence, became one of her strongest advocates. His research papers on human physiology were being distributed throughout the Alliance scientific community, challenging similar assumptions on other stations and installations. Captain, he said during one of their collaborative sessions, I must confess that your species has taught me something about the nature of scientific inquiry. We had become so focused on protecting ourselves from theoretical dangers that we stopped investigating whether those dangers were real. The culmination of these changes came when Commander Silvac announced that Orion Outpost would host the first Compatibility Festival, a celebration of the station's expanded approach to species interaction. The centerpiece of the festival would be something that 6 months earlier would have been unthinkable: a multicultural water fountain. The fountain was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate the varying needs and preferences of different species. For the aquatic representatives, it provided immersion pools. For the gaseous beings, it created water vapor displays. For the crystalline Tavarians, it generated complex resonance patterns in falling water. And for humans, it was simply a beautiful reminder of home. The festival opening ceremony drew representatives from across the sector. Alliance officials, scientific delegations, and cultural ambassadors gathered to witness what many considered a new era in interspecies cooperation. Mara was invited to speak at the ceremony, standing before an audience that included beings she had only read about in diplomatic briefings. As she looked out at the assembled crowd, she was struck by how normal it all seemed now. The careful spacing and protective equipment that had characterized her early days at the station had given way to the natural mingling of beings who had learned to trust each other. 6 months ago, she began. I arrived at this station as an anomaly to be contained and studied. Today, I stand before you as a colleague and friend. The difference isn't that I've changed, or that the dangers we feared have disappeared. The difference is that we took the time to understand each other. She gestured toward the fountain where water cascaded in patterns designed to please multiple sensory modalities. This fountain represents more than just the acceptance of H2O as a safe substance. It represents our willingness to challenge our assumptions, to test our theories against reality, and to embrace the possibility that our differences might be sources of strength rather than sources of fear. As the ceremony concluded and the fountain was activated for the first time, Mara found herself standing next to Commander Silvak, watching as beings from across the galaxy interacted with the water display. Some touched it cautiously, others studied it scientifically, and a few, particularly the younger members of various species, seemed to approach it with simple joy. "Captain," Commander Silvak said, his voice carrying the informal tone she had learned to recognize as his equivalent of warmth. "Your demonstration has had consequences beyond what any of us anticipated." "Good consequences, I hope." "Remarkable ones. Alliance Command has approved the expansion of the compatibility protocol to 15 other installations. Dr. Trell has received funding for a comprehensive xenobiological research initiative, and we've received first contact requests from 3 species that had previously been classified as incompatible." He paused, watching as Tavarian Plex carefully extended one crystalline appendage to touch the water, his structure chiming with frequencies that indicated delight. "But, perhaps most importantly, we've learned that the universe is larger and more welcoming than we thought." As if summoned by their conversation, Dr. Trell approached with his usual enthusiasm. His skin was displaying the blue-green patterns that Mara had learned to associate with contentment and excitement. "Captain Commander, I wanted to share some remarkable news," he said. "We've received a formal communication from the Desert Alliance, that confederation of species from the water-scarce regions near the galactic rim. They're requesting permission to send a delegation to study our water systems." Mara raised an eyebrow. "The same alliance that has historically avoided contact with water-rich environments." "The very same. Apparently your demonstration has reached them, and they're reconsidering their assumptions about H2O compatibility. They want to explore the possibility of expanded cooperation with both the station and humanity in general." The implications were exciting. The Desert Alliance controlled some of the richest mineral resources in their sector, but their aversion to water-rich environments had limited their participation in broader galactic commerce and diplomacy. "What do they want to study specifically?" Commander Silvak asked. Dr. Trell's skin cycled through several shades of excitement. "Everything. Water recycling systems, biological compatibility, protocols, environmental controls. But most intriguingly, they want to study human physiology to understand how a species can thrive in both water-rich and water-scarce environments." Mara smiled, thinking about the irony of the situation. So humans might serve as a bridge between water-rich and water-scarce species. "Precisely. Your adaptability could be the key to forming new alliances that were previously impossible." As the weeks passed and the Desert Alliance delegation prepared for their visit, Mara found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had arrived at Orion Outpost expecting to engage in routine diplomatic work, establishing human presence within an existing framework of interspecies cooperation. Instead, she had inadvertently sparked a revolution in how the Alliance approached species compatibility and integration. The Desert Alliance delegation arrived 3 weeks later, their ship configured for beings adapted to extremely arid environments. The delegation itself was fascinating, tall, graceful beings, with skin that seemed to shimmer like sand dunes, and respiratory systems adapted for minimal moisture loss. Their leader, Ambassador Keth Sandweaver, approached the negotiations with the caution of someone representing a society that had survived for millennia in harsh environments. His first meeting with Mara took place in the station's new multicultural conference room, with careful environmental controls that could accommodate the varying needs of all participants. Captain Lin, Ambassador Sandweaver, began his voice, carrying the dry precision of his species. Your demonstration has reached our worlds, and we find ourselves reconsidering assumptions that have guided our policies for generations. I'm honored that our work here has been of interest to your alliance, Mara replied. Interest is perhaps too mild a term, the ambassador continued. Your species' ability to thrive in environments we consider hostile challenges our understanding of biological limits. We wish to explore the possibility of expanded cooperation, but we must first understand the practical implications. What followed was the most complex negotiation of Mara's career. The Desert Alliance species had evolved in environments where water was scarce and precious, leading to social and technological developments that were fascinatingly different from human approaches. Their water conservation technologies were centuries ahead of anything humans had developed, while their understanding of biological adaptation to arid environments offered insights that could benefit human colonization efforts. Dr. Trell served as the scientific liaison for the discussions, his enthusiasm for xenobiological research, making him an ideal bridge between the different perspectives. Tavarian Plex provided analytical support, his crystalline structure resonating with harmonic patterns that the Desert Alliance found oddly comforting. The fundamental question, Ambassador Sandweaver explained during one session, is whether our species can coexist in environments that contain significant H2O concentrations. Our ancestors fled such worlds millennia ago, believing them to be uninhabitable for our physiology. Mara leaned forward. But was that belief based on direct experience or theoretical projection? The question hung in the air with the weight of centuries. Ambassador Sandweaver was silent for several moments before responding. That is what we have come here to determine. The resulting compatibility studies took weeks to complete, involving careful analysis of Desert Alliance physiology and environmental requirements. Dr. Trell approached the work with the same methodical precision he had applied to human studies, while the Desert Alliance scientists contributed their own analytical techniques and equipment. The breakthrough came when they discovered that Desert Alliance species could tolerate much higher humidity levels than their historical records suggested. More surprisingly, controlled exposure to water vapor actually improved certain aspects of their physiological function. It appears, Dr. Trell announced to the assembled researchers, that the Desert Alliance's ancestors may have overcompensated for environmental challenges, creating cultural and technological barriers that were more restrictive than necessary. Ambassador Sandweaver received this news with the equanimity of someone accustomed to adapting to new information. If this is accurate, it means that millions of our people have been unnecessarily limited in their choice of environments and opportunities. The implications extended far beyond simple environmental compatibility. The Desert Alliance's water conservation technologies, combined with human adaptability and the station's growing expertise in multicultural environments, could open new possibilities for development in previously marginal star systems. As the studies concluded, and the Alliance negotiations moved toward formal agreements, Mara found herself appointed as the primary human liaison to the Desert Alliance. It was a responsibility that would likely define the rest of her career, but she approached it with the same combination of military discipline and diplomatic flexibility that had served her well at Orion Outpost. The formal signing ceremony for the new cooperation agreements took place in the station's main conference hall, now permanently configured for multicultural gatherings. Representatives from all 12 original species were present, along with the Desert Alliance delegation and observers from Alliance Command. Commander Silvac, in his role as station commander, presided over the ceremony with the military precision that characterized his approach to important events. Today, marks not just the expansion of our alliance, but the validation of a new approach to interspecies cooperation. We have learned that our differences, rather than being sources of division, can be sources of mutual enrichment. Ambassador Sandweaver responded with equal formality, but Mara detected notes of genuine warmth in his carefully modulated voice. The Desert Alliance enters this agreement not simply as partners in trade or exploration, but as students and teachers in the ongoing project of galactic civilization. As the ceremonies concluded, and the various delegations began their preparations for departure, Mara found herself back at the multicultural fountain, watching the water cascade in patterns that now accommodated the preferences of 15 different species. The sight still amazed her, not just the technical achievement, but what it represented about the possibility of cooperation and understanding. Dr. Trell joined her at the fountain, his skin displaying the soft blue-green patterns she had learned to associate with contentment. "Captain, I've been asked to submit a comprehensive report on our compatibility research for distribution throughout the Alliance scientific community. May I include a personal observation?" "Of course, Doctor." "Your species has taught us something that our advanced scientific methods had overlooked: the value of simply trying things to see what happens. We had become so sophisticated in our theoretical projections that we forgot the importance of empirical testing." Mara smiled. "Sometimes the most advanced approach is the most direct one." "Indeed. And sometimes the greatest scientific discoveries come not from complex research protocols, but from someone being willing to drink a glass of water in front of people who think it will kill them." As the months passed and the new cooperation agreements took effect, Orion Outpost transformed from a simple multicultural hub into what many considered the crown jewel of Alliance diplomacy. The station's success in facilitating previously impossible cooperation became a model for other installations throughout Alliance space. Mara's role evolved as well. She was promoted to Senior Diplomatic Biology Advisor, with responsibility for compatibility assessment at installations throughout the sector. Her work took her to stations and colonies where species integration had been limited by untested assumptions, and in each case, she applied the same combination of scientific rigor and practical experimentation that had proven successful at Orion Outpost. But it was during a return visit to the station, 6 months after the Desert Alliance agreements had been signed, that Mara experienced what she considered the most meaningful validation of their work. She was walking through the station's main plaza, a space that had been reconfigured to accommodate the environmental and social needs of all member species, when she noticed a group of young beings from various species playing together near the fountain. The group included a young Sylvacan, her scales showing the bright patterns of childhood excitement, a crystalline Tavarian whose structure chimed with laughter, and 2 Desert Alliance children who were cautiously but enthusiastically splashing in the fountain's shallow pools. What struck Mara most powerfully was how natural it all looked. These children had grown up in an environment where species differences were simply facts to be accommodated rather than barriers to be overcome. For them, the careful protocols and safety measures that had initially surrounded human contact were just historical curiosities. Tavarian Plex approached his adult structure, displaying more subdued but equally pleased patterns. "Remarkable, isn't it? They have no conception of the fears that once divided us." "That's the real victory," Mara agreed. "Not just that we learned to overcome our assumptions, but that we've created an environment where the next generation won't be limited by them." Commander Silvac joined them, his presence still commanding, but more relaxed than it had been during Mara's early days at the station. "Captain, I've received confirmation from Alliance Command. The compatibility protocol is being implemented at 47 installations with more requesting assessment. Your approach has become the new standard for species integration." The scope of the change was gratifying, but Mara found herself most moved by the simpler evidence in front of her. A Sylvacan child was teaching a Desert Alliance child how to make water droplets dance on the surface tension of the fountain pool, while a young Tavarian provided harmonic accompaniment to their laughter. "Commander," she said, "I think we've accomplished something more important than revised protocols or expanded alliances. We've proven that the universe is more welcoming than we thought, and that the barriers between us are often smaller than we imagine." As if to emphasize her point, one of the Desert Alliance children looked up from the fountain and waved at the assembled adults, calling out a greeting in the universal trade language that had become the common tongue of the station's young residents. It was a simple gesture, but it carried the weight of possibility, the promise of a future where species differences would be sources of richness rather than division. Standing there beside the fountain that had become a symbol of their success, watching children from across the galaxy play together in the substance that had once been considered humanity's most dangerous characteristic, Mara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. She had come to Orion Outpost as an anomaly to be contained and studied. She was leaving as a catalyst for a revolution in how the galaxy approached the fundamental questions of cooperation and coexistence. The water continued to cascade in patterns designed to please 15 different forms of perception. Its sound, a gentle reminder that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest actions. Someone willing to take a drink when others believe it will kill them, and in doing so proving that the universe is larger, more welcoming, and more connected than anyone had dared to imagine. In the end, it wasn't science or diplomacy or military strategy that had transformed their understanding. It was the simple recognition that different didn't necessarily mean dangerous, that assumptions could be tested, and that water, far from being a substance that would melt the bonds between species, could become the foundation for connections that none of them had thought possible.